They told you it's burnout. They lied. It's nurse trauma. Your body never lied. The system did. I'm Dr. Lorre Laws. Let's get into it. I want to take you back to my kitchen table several years ago. It was near midnight, and my daughter Megan and her nursing school bestie are surrounded by flashcards and half-empty coffee cups and a laptop with, 40 tabs open each. They were studying for their first pathophys exam. These two friends, now besties, met in their first semester of nursing school. They were each other's rock through every exam, every clinical rotation that broke their hearts a little. Every night when they were sure one or the other of them were going to fail, and yet they graduated together. They got pinned together. They cried in each other's arms at the ceremony, the kind of crying that's mostly tears of joy mixed in with a little bit of fear. And then they entered practice. Last week I told you what happened to Megan. She graduated summa cum laude. She earned clinical excellence awards. She had a 5-star preceptor in her first role. She was supported by a brilliant nurse coach. Every advantage that could be given to a new graduate nurse, every favor I could call in, everything that she could do for herself, we did. And the system traumatized her in less than 3 months anyway. Today I'm going to tell you exactly how all that happened. Because what happened to my daughter is happening to somebody's son or daughter right now, every day, on a shift. As I'm speaking, this is still happening. Megan's first job was home hospice. It's a specialty that can take years to grow into, but that's where her healer's heart was at end-of-life care. And the minute her preceptorship ended, and again, it was she had one of the best preceptors I'd ever seen. But the moment that window closed, she was assigned 14 to 16 home health hospice patients across a 3-hour driving radius. For a new graduate, alone in the field, an unsafe staffing ratio for even the most experienced of nurses. Policy said that she had to chart in her car before her next patient. We all know how that goes. No one charts in the moment when 15 patients are declining all at once. So the charting piles up like it does for all of us. She'd come home and she would chart until 10 or 11 o'clock at night after already spending nearly 10 hours out in the field. And then one day came this call from corporate. Just so happened I was in the room at the time. Some administrative suit phoned to move her from hourly to salary. It wasn't a choice, they said. It's a new business model. No nurse would be paid by the hour any longer. They were moving her to salary, all nurses to salary. Now, Megan is pretty sharp, I must say. And she asked, well, if I'm on salary, then you're going to lower my patient load so I can actually finish in the 40-hour work week, right? Crickets. Then that's not something we do here in the financial office. You need to talk to your site manager, she was told. So Megan pushed back. What happens when I've worked 40 hours by 10 a.m. on Thursday, which is usually the case, she asked. And his answer? But if you're done by 2 hours early some days, then you can just take the rest of the day off, which we all know never happens. Megan didn't miss a beat. She said, well, since you're in the financial office, maybe you could check my time cards and tell me if I've ever once been done by 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And here's the part I need for every nurse listening to just, spend a moment with me here. This is not a quirky, bad boss story. This is wage theft dressed up as a policy update. They might as well have walked into our home and taken her valuables, because what is more valuable than your time? And the research is consistent across continents. Up to 30% of new graduate nurses leave their first job or the profession entirely in year 1. And by the end of year 2, between 37 and 57 are gone. That's not a workforce with growing pains. That is a workforce being consumed at its entry point. Now let's just take a quick pause here, because if Megan's story is landing in your body, then there's a free nurse trauma masterclass that's coming up that is built exactly for you. I'm going to give you the details at the end, so stay with me. But if you want to pause and take a little peek, just go over to drlorrelaws.com/. Now, let's get back to Megan's first 3 months. I watched as the prolonged allostatic load of avoidable nurse trauma took its toll on her. Her body was keeping a record that her mind wasn't ready to read. She had the GI distress. She lost 15 pounds of unintended weight loss in 8 weeks, and she was on a frame that didn't have extra body fat to begin with. She had insomnia that made everything worse. She got brain foggy, anxious. She was withdrawing socially from her relationships and the activities that she enjoyed. She had a perpetual work hangover that would never end. And then there's that sense of doom and dread before each shift. And then it hit the existential crisis of believing that nursing was the worst mistake of her life. And here's the science that the system doesn't want named. In the study that I conducted before leaving academia, I found that 76% of what the industry calls burnout symptoms map directly to nurse-specific trauma. Not stress, not fatigue, trauma. Nurse-specific trauma. In 2022, Dr. Karen Foley published her peer-reviewed middle-range theory of nurse psychological trauma. It is the first evidence-based framework to define the types of trauma that emerge from the exact conditions that Megan, new grads, and nurses worldwide are facing. Every nurse I've worked with has lived the 2 most common types: insufficient resource trauma and system-induced trauma. Megan hit both inside of 3 months. And this is why your wellness app doesn't fix it. You can't think or relax your way out of a dysregulated nervous system that's stuck in survival mode. Burnout interventions, by their nature, are top-down and cognitive. Trauma healing is ground up, somatic, and neurobiological. So if you're trying to get to the root cause of your quote-unquote burnout, you're probably going all about it wrong. We've had the wrong diagnosis and the wrong treatment for 50 years. The body keeps the score that the system refuses to keep. Now here's the part about Megan's story that gives me hope. The next day, she took her questions straight to her site manager, as that corporate suit advised her to do. And the manager, after patiently listening to her case and that of her colleagues, gave the usual line. "Well, there's nothing I can do," she said. "It's coming from corporate." Shrug. Megan reached into her bag and then silently pulled out a slightly bent manila envelope and slid it across the desk. "There's nothing you can do," she said, with her voice shaking, "but there's something that I can do. Here's my letter of resignation. I'm giving my 2-week notice." Well, over the next 2 weeks, they tried everything to keep her. The empathy manipulation, the work family, the "we're so short-staffed, we can't do it without you," all of the manipulation tactics. But Megan stood firm. And by the end of that 2-week period, as it turned out, they offered her a week that had 4 10-hour shifts, and they hired an LPN to handle all of her second visits, which made it possible to do the work that needed to be done in roughly a 40 to 50-hour work. So she ended up staying on her terms. She demanded work-life balance, and they were able to figure it out. But Megan was fortunate. A lot of nurses aren't so fortunate. We've had many nurses, and by many I mean thousands and thousands, report that when they take action to advocate for themselves in the way that Megan did, that they are either let go or transferred or put on nights or floated every time they come into units in which they're unfamiliar, and the unit or the organization will make it so uncomfortable that they end up leaving. But again, Megan's story, she was fortunate. She learned about nurse-specific trauma right out of the gate of her new graduate career. Most of us didn't get that education and knowledge. Most of the nurses I work with, and there's been thousands now, already arrive stuck in survival mode in their nervous system after years or decades. And when survival mode is your baseline, the strong boundaries that Megan set and the ability that she had to be willing and able to leave her place of employment, well, those sometimes can feel impossible. So let me ask you the question that I asked the readers of my newsletter this week. What would your career have looked like if you had known on day one how to keep your nervous system safe and protected, and to keep your nervous system and your mitochondria from getting stuck in survival mode? That's the question that my work exists to answer. And that's what I call Nursing 2.0. It's the Safety and Professional Well-Being Edition, where regulated nurses change the system from the inside out. The science around nurse-specific trauma probably didn't exist when you were a new grad, but it exists now. And I'm hosting a free interactive masterclass for nurses who are done being told to do more self-care and more wellness modules and to go figure out their work-life balance. I will show you the real difference between burnout and nurse-specific trauma and why every resilience workshop and module have been aimed at the wrong target. And so this masterclass is about 90 minutes, and I have 3 days that you can choose from, which would be Tuesday, June 30th, Wednesday, July 1st, or Thursday, July 2nd. So go to drlorrelaws.com/masterclass and grab your seat. That's drlorrelaws.com masterclass. I don't offer these live master classes often, so you want to get in now. The next one may not be for several months. From my healer's heart to yours, and until next time, namaste, and I'll see you in the free master class.